Let's go live in 5 seconds or so.
Can you give us a countdown, Mr. Chairman?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Good afternoon, Corporations Committee. Welcome to our last official House Corporation Committee meeting of, well, really, it's our last House meeting of 2021 because every other meeting will be interim. And just a reminder to all the members and anyone listening online, joint interim topics will be, I think, in the room across the hall, room number 6, tomorrow at 8 o'clock for our joint interim topics with the Senate. I believe you all got the information passed out. I know I believe there are several bills or thoughts being added to that, perhaps by the end of the day from the chairman, myself, or other chairmen from other committees who are dumping bills on us, including potential marijuana in the interim, because judiciary decided that was probably not a favored topic for their interim. So we can discuss that in the morning. With that, Barb, if you'd call the roll.
I will. Representative Blackburn. Representative Clausen. Representative Clifford.
Excuse.
Thank you. Representative Duncan. Vice Chairman Air.
Here.
Representative Hunt. Representative McGuire. Representative Roscoe. Chairman Zwanitzer.
Here.
Thank you.
And so committee, the first bill up today would be Senate File 15, Temporary Licensing and Permitting Authority. And I guess I'm just going to be honest with everyone, this just got lost in the shuffle as so many other sponsors were asking me to hear their bills, and we had other committee bills that all of a sudden our last meeting, I'm finally getting to an interim committee bill. And it does not appear like anyone is here to present this bill necessarily. And so I would go ahead and ask any of the 5 members who were on the interim committee if they would like to present or discuss Senate File 15. When I read through it, it basically just allows our professions and occupational boards to waive or modify requirements, which I believe many already did through some rulemaking, but not necessarily statutory authority. So Representative Clausen, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The genesis of this bill is during the pandemic, we had a bunch of problems with licensing. It was issues for the former chairman's district and several issues from my district that people couldn't get licenses, and that's the genesis. It was pandemic related.
Okay. Any other committee members? I'm quickly looking what the Senate took out. They took out pari-mutuel, apparently. The Senate amendment took out the board is authorized to establish examination, inspection, permit, license fees for any profession or occupation related under this title or under, they had 21-2802, 23-2414, and 11-25-105, which was a pari-mutuel commission. But apparently the Senate decided the pari-mutuel board may not need temporary authority for permits or licensing fees in a pandemic. Representative Duncan.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I think the conversation behind that piece right there had to do with the fact that there might be some overreaching by the commission. And they were worried at the time when this was all going, depending on the whims of whoever is the person in charge, whether they would I think their rules within their commission or board, the rules were may suspend so many races or so many, things like that. And so they were originally in this bill to try and make sure that they were granted, because of COVID and things like that, they weren't able to do certain things. And then I think that's where the origination of why they were in here originally. And so I'm not sure why the Senate pulled them out, but that's kind of where if you've got an oversight authority and between administrations or whatever and they may not see eye to eye with the participants and they may be a little authoritarian. Just some background.
All right, committee. Any public comment on Senate File 15 from members of the public today? Certainly not as exciting as last Friday in this room. Anyone on the line? I don't think Ms. Freese or Ms. Wilbur, I can't imagine the Sierra Club has any thoughts on temporary licensing and permitting authority. So let me call for public comment one more time. Seeing none, we will close public comment on Senate File 15. Committee, what is your pleasure? Moved by Duncan, seconded by Blackburn. It's so rare, I could say we could go page by page through a bill like other committees do, because most court bills, are 70 pages. But if there is any discussion or amendments on any of the wording on pages 1, 2, or 3, it does become effective immediately. And you will note that the relevant committees that joint corp elections and political subdivisions has, I hate to say dominion over, has oversight over, report to us, and then the labor health reported related occupations, they report to labor health. Seeing any other question or testimony on the bill, Representative Blackburn? I do not believe net meeting would be appropriate currently as a profession or occupation, because we license electricians, but not really solar installers. And I feel like any bill with the word net metering is just too hot right now, Representative Blackburn. All right, with that committee, seeing no further discussion, question being called, Barb, if you'd call the roll on Senate File 15.
Representative Blackburn,
Aye.
Representative Clausen, Representative Clifford didn't leave an absentee vote.
We'll just excuse her.
Okay. Representative Duncan. Vice Chairman Air,
Aye.
Representative Hunt, Representative McGuire, Representative Roscoe, Chairman Swanitzer. Mr.
And-
Chairman, 8 ayes.
And
One
committee, I
excused.
bet Representative Clifford knew that I would probably have her carry this because she only carried one insurance bill from the committee. But if anybody else in the committee would like to carry Senate File 15 on the floor, I would certainly take any takers at this point. Representative Blackburn is just walking away, so he doesn't have to do it either. Is that a you'll take it, Representative Blackburn? Representative Clausen, you want this one? Okay. I can't imagine anyone's going to put up too much of a fight on the floor, so I'll put it under your name, and I assume it's a committee bill. It'll get heard tomorrow. With that committee, we're already on to our second bill at 1223, Senate File 28, Motor Vehicles Security Interest Perfection, another interim committee bill. I don't actually know the background of it, but if anybody in the committee wants to share what happened in the interim, why it came forward, certainly happy to take testimony from committee members. Representative Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe, and I'm looking at Mr. Meyer, I believe this is trying to correct the problem of the security interest once you purchase a vehicle and it goes through the processes between purchase to the title and registration and all those different parts and the mortgage and all that. And then it finally gets to the courthouse to get filed, correct? Shake your heads, yes? Okay, gets filed. There's a lot of time between there that things get a lag and some issues and problems can happen in the middle. And so this is basically trying to clean up some of that lag time. Did I do that right? Okay. They're
Pretty
shaking their
convincing.
heads.
All right, with that, let's take public comment on Senate File 28. County clerks, do you have testimony on this bill? Mr. Pick? Don't all jump, you guys can all come up at once. Yeah, there's 4 seats up here. You can take all 4 chairs and. And whoever wants to go first, just remember when you talk, state your name and who you're with for the record. Mr. Meyer, I'm guessing you get to lead the charge. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, Scott Meyer with the Wyoming Bankers Association. We are up here with the Wyoming Automobile Dealers Association, the County Clerks Association, and the Western States Federal Credit Unions Association. Mountain West. Thank you. And I will tell the committee, this is really quite, it's been a long and arduous process, but it really is something to I think, be very proud of with the work that's been done before the committee has gotten it, because all four of the groups here have gotten together and dealt with this issue. And what we were faced with was the fact that when a title is brought in with the proper documents and everything else, the clerks were doing whatever they had to do to get that security interest onto that title. And it became effective once they got everything taken care of and they actually got it filed. What we were running into is a problem that, and I think that could have possibly be more of a problem after COVID, but because of the backlog, whether it's because of employees, not being available, workload and all that other stuff, what we were having is people were borrowing money to buy vehicles, wanting to get a security interest on it, of course, and it was extending past the 30-day deadlines in some very rare cases. And I will say it's rare. It doesn't always happen, but once it does happen and goes past that 30 days and then somebody declares bankruptcy, then under the bankruptcy law, that security interest is no longer there. So the lender, whether it be a bank or a credit union or one of the financing companies like through an automobile dealership, those would become unsecured loans. And basically there's just not much you can do because they're going bankrupt anyway. So the idea was to change it from the date when it was actually filed to the date when they brought it in. And that created a little bit of a headache with respect to, are they bringing in a completed application? And so you'll see in the bill, and it's a substitute bill from when it was originally worked through on the interim, but this allows the county clerks to put a date on there so that it's effective that date, regardless of when they actually get to putting it on in their system and everything, but it actually gets filed on the date that's there, provided that the person, that whether it's the lender or whether it's the automobile dealer, whatever, brings in a properly tendered application. That means you get all the stuff that you need to have done, the right fees, the VIN checks, everything else. Once that gets done and they affix a date to it, that's when is the effective date of the security interest, and not when they get down the line of doing these. And I will represent to this committee that, having spent some time with Fremont County's clerks in their office and watching, and then of course in Laramie County too, watching, here's the steps that we go through. It is not just as simple as I really kind of thought it 2 years ago, to just simply putting a stamp on it, because they get not hundreds, but thousands of these things coming in during a week or whatever, and they get stacked up. And I understand where they're coming from. So it really was quite a deal to work together to come to a solution that everybody could live with, that actually makes that filing date effective when they bring it in, once it's properly brought in and has everything there. So I will tell you that I think the bill works well for everybody. It is a changing of the statute a little bit to the processes that go on and what has to be done. But I will certainly turn it over to the rest of the group that's here. They've worked phenomenally hard on this bill. They're just an outstanding group of people. And I think that we have really quite a product here that everybody can be proud of. And I would stand for any questions unless any of these other folks want to say something.
Committee, I'm probably going to let all four people testify unless you have burning questions. So, Mr. Pickard.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Dave Pickard. I represent the Mountain West Credit Union Association, and I'm not going to repeat everything that Mr. Meyer said, but we have been working on this for a year and a half. It really came about because of the issues in bankruptcy and the lag time of getting that lien perfected. So what you see in your title is motor vehicle security interest perfection, and that's exactly what we're changing the process in order to have that perfection occur in a time frame that will be recognized by the bankruptcy courts as being perfected in protecting the interests of the lien holder. We did have quite a bit of back and forth on the Senate side, and Senator Case has been working this issue quite diligently over the last year and a half. He brought a private bill, I think it was last session, that then got us into the interim. And as we concluded our less than 5-minute testimony in the Senate, Clerk Freese was on the line as well. And what it brought to me, and one of my colleagues that always uses the word kumbaya. But really what it was is a bunch of trumpets and clarinets playing like they're at the drums along the Rockies. And we all got along, and here we have this bill in front of you, and we fully support it, and I'll stand for any questions as well.
Ms. Langford.
Here we go. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I'm Mary Langford, and I have the honor of representing the County Clerks Association. And I do believe we have the Honorable Julie Freese on Zoom. She is the Fremont County Clerk. She's been involved in this. I can't really tell you much more than what these other two gentlemen have told you. We have worked for a year and a half or so on this piece of legislation, and we have reached agreement. The clerks are satisfied that we can administer the bill according to the way it's been presented. We also want to thank the committee for bringing this forth, because we have a lot of sweat equity into this bill. We're glad to see it here today so that it can be heard. And we have nothing to provide any more than has been presented. We're satisfied and we're willing to stand for question.
It wasn't really brought by the county clerks. I'm guessing it just affects you. I'll have some questions. I'll let Ms. Allen go. I think you've been the lobbyist for the automobile dealers since I've been in the legislature, but I just don't see it in corporations enough. So welcome. Thoughts?
Maybe. Good afternoon. Marcia Allen, Wyoming Automobile Dealers Association, representing the franchise car and truck dealers, new car dealers in the state. And yes, Mr. Chairman, I have been with WADA this month. Actually, I celebrated my 32nd year anniversary. I have been the executive director since 2005. So a little while I have been with the association, and I will not repeat all of the comments made by previous testimony. We are very strongly in support of this bill, have worked on it for a year and a half. And I would just like to thank everybody for being open and having the conversations and working through the issue. The dealers are affected a little bit differently than the lenders because their agreement is with the lender. And if there's not a security agreement in place, then it's an unsecured loan. So they potentially could be liable for those loans if the lender called them back. And depending on the lag, it could be millions.
The dealer's not, the lender's liable, right? Is a dealer, have you had instances before
if-
this bill?
If it's an unsecured loan, the lender cannot fund the loan. Call it back.
But that
So,
comes back on the automobile.
and then it would come back on the dealers. But I have not heard of anybody calling back that it's just the potential liability. They do receive letters from the lenders regularly stating that they have not secured the lien perfection on the title work, kind of like a first warning sort of thing. But they have had been caught in the bankruptcy piece of it, where the person filed bankruptcy and there was not a secured lien, and the lender charged the dealer back for the amount. And then the dealer can't sell the vehicle until it goes through all of the legal processes. So it's very important to our members, and we are very much in support of the language that has been agreed upon by all of the parties. I would just stand for any questions.
So go ahead, Representative Bear.
Just because my memory is really bad and because we have a few new members on the committee, could you just kind of tell us the highlights of what changed in this piece of legislation from what we worked on earlier when there was not quite so much good agreement? Just a highlight of how you got to this good kumbaya moment.
Yes, Representative Air, Chairman Swanson, Representative Air, the big thing other than making that date change was recognizing the issue that a lot of the language in there said it had to be immediate. And that was really putting a bind on our county clerks because as I said, when I went through and watched how they did things and the order of things, you couldn't do it immediate because literally they would be having people spend the night there every night with all these stacks of titles that were coming in. And so this allowed them to do things in an orderly process. And once everything was kind of done, then they could go back and put the date on there that when they actually received it. So that's the other part of the change that from the interim to now was making sure that that language was clear enough to protect our clerks from having to do something immediately.
Since I'm new, I'll be really gentle about this question. I don't, the way I read the bill in the current process, sure, the clerks have burdens, but ultimately, we wouldn't have an issue if, no offense, banks and credit unions weren't making loans to people who would be declaring bankruptcy within 30 days. I mean, right? What am I missing here? I mean, ultimately, that's the issue is somebody has lended money to somebody who declares bankruptcy before processes can work. And yes, processes could be quicker. But is there some culpability by lenders who should, isn't there due diligence to make sure you don't make loans on vehicles to people before they declare bankruptcy in 30 days?
Mr. Chairman, that would probably be true. I think these are more extraordinary circumstances. I won't throw the COVID in there because this was happening before that. But if you look at certain counties that have a primarily a coal-related industry, when coal mines are being shut down, these are things that are way out beyond that any of the lenders might have realized or recognized at the time. And with these unforeseen facts and circumstances, then we were seeing a lot more. And quite honestly, that's why I say I think I will see more coming up because of COVID and everything. But really, it was not an issue that so much as surprise. We have a lot of people unemployed.
Okay, that's a really good answer. Mr. Pickard, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Representative Ayer, actually to answer your question specifically, I think the agreed upon language that we came to is referenced really on page 2, line 11. And this is where it gets to the specifics of what Mr. Meyer was talking about. A properly tendered completed application for certificate of title along with the valid title of record issued pursuant to Wyoming Statute 31-103. And then the next section starting subsection B there at line 15. Upon receiving the information required under this subsection and to go forward, the certificate of title to the vehicle or motor vehicle with the lien information, including the month, date, and year it was delivered to the county clerk. That's the essence of the bill, is that once all of those steps are completed, in the eyes of the bankruptcy court, that lien is going to be perfected because it's Wyoming statute that is indicating what is a perfected lien under our statutes. It's not a federal code or anything. All 50 states have a different way of perfecting liens in a variety of consumer transactions. So that really is the crux of the bill. And that was the negotiated part, as Mr. Meyer said, after observing the process in which our clerks go through to say, it's just not as easy as providing a packet and frankly demanding, which we were here 15 months ago, demanding that the clerks perfect that lien immediately. And they have a lot of other processes that they need to go through. They need to know that the VIN inspection is correct. I've purchased vehicles and the VIN number's off by one number or letter, and then you have to go back through the process. Now, in those instances, I didn't do financing, so it's not a lien perfection issue, but it does delay me getting the title. And I recognize that because mistakes are made. But this really was an attempt on behalf of the lenders to accelerate when that perfection occurs, because in the eyes of the bankruptcy court or the courts in general, if you're talking about other instances where you're trying to go after the property and execute on a lien, was it executed properly? And so this really cleans that up. I think it's very timely, in the essence of making sure that our lenders in Wyoming and our, all of the lenders, including the captive finance companies, are willing to do business in Wyoming with our dealerships and our consumers.
Okay, Ms. Representative Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Allen, would you because how many of us were on here? 1, 2, 3, 4 of us? 5. Remember some of the details, but could you, for the sake of others, like after, if for some reason this did revert back to you as the dealer, and you made mention of you can't sell the vehicle right away, would you just briefly explain the process of that, of how cumbersome that is?
Ms. Allen.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Duncan. So if a vehicle, if it's because of a bankruptcy issue, obviously the sale has gone through, the paperwork went to the county clerk's office to have the security interest perfected. And there was a delay for whatever reason. And that is the person filed bankruptcy. And it goes through the bankruptcy court. They have said that there is no security interest on the vehicle. So it goes back, gets kicked out. So there's no lien on the title of the vehicle. So it comes back to the dealership. Most of the time, sometimes they don't even get the vehicle back, but most times it comes back, the dealership gets the vehicle back. But there's no security interest on the lien. So it has to go through the bankruptcy courts and be determined there. So until that is determined, it takes the dealer has to hire an attorney to represent them in that course of the lender who actually lended the money has charged the dealer back for that purchase price. So they are now out of the cost of the vehicle. They have hired an attorney and they can't sell it until the bankruptcy piece of it is resolved.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Freese, I do see you're on from Fremont County. Any discussion or thoughts you wanted to add?
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Julie Freese, Fremont County Clerk and representing Clerks Association. To just follow up a little bit on what happened from the time you saw us before till now on the clerk side. What we were trying to accomplish is we wanted to work with something for the banks and the dealerships that worked for them. But we definitely needed to make sure that the paperwork wasn't just coming in. We were stamping them furiously as they came in with a date, and then finding out later when you get to go through them that they are missing a VIN inspection, that they are not complete, they don't have the amount of money we need, whatever it is, not to be able to file the lien and issue the title. So I think the last piece of that is it was still in the statute that said that we can currently put it on the title. So our whole idea is, I think it changes it, the part that the banks and the dealers need is to know that there is a specific date when they got it into us and everything was correct. That's the perfection date, it seems to me now, is when we stamp that. So we still have, it's on us to, even if we get a huge amount of work in today, let's say at 4:30, maybe I don't have time today at 4:30, but on tomorrow, they're going to have the same date stamp of today. Make sure that they get through that, make sure all the stuff that is not able to be processed is set aside so we can get it back to the dealership, stamp all the stuff that's good. And then whenever we type the title, then we would put that date on the title. As you know, people have 65 days to pay their sales tax. And so there was no hurry for us to have to do that. And we really pushed for that because I didn't want to have to be sitting here typing titles after hours because I took that in. So that was the whole part of that. And I think it makes it very clear for lenders and dealerships what their responsibilities is to get it in on time and for us to be able to stamp it the date that they would like it stamped, and the same for us to make sure that that happened. So I stand for any questions after that, though.
Questions from Ms. Freese? Seeing none. Thanks, Julie. Any other questions for the panel before us, committee? Seeing none. Anyone else? Representative Eric, go ahead.
One, and I probably should have asked this of Ms. Freed, but Ms. Langford, I'm sure can answer as well. So did I understand her correctly to say that it's possible and maybe even likely that you might stamp a date on that title a day or two after you actually received all the information, and then you type it or put the date as of the day you received everything? So it could be kind of post dated a day or two. Is that correct?
Ms. Langford?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Ayer, that's correct. The date that the lien is delivered will be the date of perfection. The issue that we ran into with our part of this whole situation is that we were required to issue the title as well as perfect the lien concurrently. Concurrently is now out of the bill or out of the statute. And that allows us to be able to perfect the lien when it's delivered. Then if the customer should not come in for 65 days, because he doesn't have to come in and pay sales tax and complete his transaction, then we've got the lien secured and the title will be made, and that secured date will be put on the title when it's made, or other issues that can come up with not having a complete title application.
Follow up, Representative Bear.
So it could be several days or even as much as a month or so after that, after you get the title, finally all the paperwork finished, the sales tax paid and everything that you need to issue the title.
That's correct.
It can be quite a few days after
Chairman. Yes,
the date that you stamp on the perfection of the lien.
that's right. Yes.
Further questions for the panel? Seeing none, thank you, all of you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment on Senate File 28? Utilities, spouses, county commissioners, net meters. None of the three people online seem to care on Senate File 28. So with that, we will close public comment on Senate File 28. Committee, what's your pleasure? Moved by Blackburn, seconded by McGuire. Any amendments or discussion, committee? I mean, I've read through it and I was impressed. I took all the words such out of the bill. So the good senators down the hall either caught that or they won't go to a conference committee for that purpose. I don't think I have any concerns. I just want to make sure everybody's comfortable. Seem to be. Okay. Question on the bill. Barb, if you'd call the roll on Senate File 28.
Representative Blackburn. Representative Clausen. Representative Clifford submitted an absentee vote of aye. Representative Duncan. Vice Chairman Ayer. Representative Hunt. Representative McGuire. Representative Roscoe. Chairman Swanitzer. 9 ayes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So committee, are we all in agreement to give Representative Duncan this bill to floor manage? Appears we are. All right, committee, that is the official end of all bills I have in my desk for this session. As I'm sure you're all aware, we did not get through all the public comment last Friday on net metering. I did bring an amendment yesterday that got bounced on germaneness, which we have some issues with based on other germaneness issues this year. But I know we do have 3 people online who I'm not sure if they want to comment or just want to make sure we don't do anything too crazy. But if everybody has 20 minutes, I know 2 of them do want to testify who did not get to testify last Friday. There is no motion on the table at this time unless someone wants to bring something up. But I, as a chairman, I did feel bad that I did not get through all public comment. So at the committee's pleasure, you certainly don't have to stay if nobody's bringing a motion, but there are a couple people who would like to share some thoughts with us. If you got time. So with that, I'll bring him. Representative Vera, go ahead.
I'm not inclined to bring this from the table, and I think we have heard ample public testimony on the issue.
Okay.
But if you want to, somebody wants to say anything, I guess they can.
Well, we do have 3 people online in the room. At this time, I don't plan on bringing up I mean, if the committee wants me to, I would certainly do that and we can have the fight on the floor. But I don't plan on making the motion. So if no one else is planning on untabling that bill at this time, but I would say to Ms. Wilbert or Mr. Ziem or Mr. Publitz, any comments you did have, if you wanted to share, certainly willing to take any public comment generally on the idea. But not seeing any of you turning on your screens. Any comments? I know I only gave you an hour or a minute last week from. Okay, and I know you drove back over. Any last minute comments? Just making sure we don't do anything crazy on you, right? I got a couple of those emails the last 24 hours. What? We'll see how long it sleeps, but maybe for another year. All right, well, with that committee, again, we will have joint interim topics tomorrow with our colleagues down the hall. And for tomorrow, we might, I will refresh and send an email to everybody with the interim topics. And I haven't actually talked to Senator Driscoll, but I imagine we will prioritize. I'll ask each of you for your top 3. And obviously, I think redistricting will be separate, but from everything I'm hearing, election issues are going to be a big topic for in line with redistricting, but really everything from how we conduct elections to primaries to political parties. So I've had those years where it was all insurance. This year, it might be a whole lot of elections. So, but if there's any other topics anybody wants to add before tomorrow, let me know or email Danielle. And otherwise, Representative Hunt, go ahead.
To that point,
Mhm.
I guess obviously pending management council, but would it be our interest, I guess, would it be our goal, I should say, to try and get non-redistricting topics done prior to getting to that issue in the fall, as in, whatever spring and summer meetings we have, try and get those bills processed, drafted, et cetera, before, and then set that all aside for focusing solely on redistricting come September, October, et cetera. What are your thoughts?
So I think the plan is we're gonna have 3 meetings as of now on corporations interim topics, 2 of which will happen before, from what I understand, the federal government will get us our numbers. We may have some trickling in June or July at a county-wide level, and so we may move up that timeline, but we would have 2 meetings on corp and then give LSO that allowance. It takes them 6 weeks by the time we have comment to amend and update bills. So we would have one last court meeting in October, November as well, maybe in line with the redistricting meeting, just for bill processing. But yes, it's my intention to have at least 2 of our 3 meetings before we really kick off redistricting, and maybe put our first redistricting meeting as a 3rd day on one of those. And so I didn't actually hear from any of you on which days in the interim you just could not make it. But if anybody, I did hear from you, right, on that week. And it does look like 2nd week of July will be special session from everything kind of coalescing. So after 4th of July and before Frontier Days. Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Maybe a recommendation that we do have an hour or 2 with someone who is well versed in it. I would add to that somebody who's not an expert in redistricting in Chicago. We have a completely different redistricting challenge than the big cities with redlining and everything. So that would just be a thought. Thank you.
I think that would be good. I have been reached out. I think there's 3 or 4 nonprofits they say they're nonpartisan, who work in redistricting efforts and are more than happy to come to Wyoming, as well as NCSL. And if you look in other states, because I've gone to many of those redistricting meetings, from day one, it's how do we not have a lawsuit? I mean, and that is, I would say half of the states, that is their sole goal in redistricting, is not to be sued. Where in Wyoming, traditionally, it's been how do we best represent the people through our unique geography. mountain ranges is a big one, like the Basin and Western Wyoming. So yes, every time I've gone to one of those conferences, it's here's how many people are sued and here's how often it's going to happen and here's what you do to protect yourself. And I think the only thing we have done in Wyoming is have a what they call majority minority district for the reservation. And I would strongly assume we will have some type of what they call majority minority district still, and that would be our main parameter outside of county lines. Representative Roscoe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think you have been through redistricting and yeah, and I was with you, and we have a really a pro in Mary Langford who helped us through this last one. And I guess the other thing that I was going to ask, we had a great map system that you could put up and you could change it and redistrict, really work it really well. So I hope we have that same thing. I remember a little story since we have time, is we took about 100 square miles in my district and moved it. And then we were trying to adjust the populations. And so I asked how many how did that change? And they said it was 6 people. So anyway, it was funny at the time. Thank you.
Committee it is, I believe my intention and the co-chairs, there is special software that does have so many licenses, but I believe we have enough for every member of the committee and a couple of extras. And I'm not sure how we're dishing out the extras to other members who may want to draw their own plans. Just with the late date of getting the information, it won't be like it has been the last 2 redistricting times where we kind of had all summer to study and talk about plans. It'll be a pretty hard sprint. So we got to get it right. Representative Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So are we going to have any sort of setup of some sort in terms of meeting? Just kind of walk me through part of the process locally. You know, do we need to sit down locally and figure out something, or are we going to have guidelines first before we sit down locally so that we can get those people on board, so that especially since it's a faster process? Can you help me with that?
I'll give you
If
what
I
we did the
could
last 2
just
times.
a little tag along to that question. And I'm assuming that our goal is to have a redistricting plan in place for the session in February.
We have to.
We have to.
It is required.
Okay.
And so the last 2 times, last time Representative Roscoe and I were there, and then what we learned from the 2002, and I know Ms. Langford has been through 3 of these and Ms. Freese has been through 4, is we did start with basic ground rules before we had all the information of number 1 rule historically has been try to stay within county lines. As you know, many of our legislative seats, if there's a vacancy or an issue, having legislative districts in more than 1 county gets all sorts of weird math when you have to replace a legislator. So that was number 1. And then we set the ground rule of 5%, no more than 2.5% on either side of what the divisible number was of each district to ensure we didn't get a lawsuit. And so I think they came up with 10 or 12 parameters right away before we really started digging in the numbers. And it was safer and easier at that point, right? Because then here's the ground rules. You can't play any interesting games on allowing certain things. And certainly geographic systems come into place, right? I mean, the basin will be difficult. As you looked at Representative Winter's district, it goes into Fremont County, and it's just an interesting district they had to draw. So the basin might be where we start. The other part of your question was, when we get the ground rules of how, counties, population, what the numbers are, it would be my hope, and I think I've discussed with my co-chairman and other people, that if the number fits nicely, to not have 60-30, to have 55-20, I mean, whatever it is, the Constitution requires at least 2, but not more than 3 reps per Senate district. And I don't think anybody really feels like we want more than 60-30, but if the numbers draw out to 25-50, I probably will push for that. So depending what that breakdown is, I think that's where we start. And then we look at each individual community. So Laramie County, we would probably have 9 to 11 seats, depending. We would have a county-wide meeting either through our county commissioners or through their legislators. But then in your area, you kind of would know how many seats there are. And you would work with your local county clerk and elected officials to come up with a potential plan, is what happened last time. You have a general idea of how many seats, and then some type of hopefully public meeting with constituents who want to come with your county commissioners, county clerk to sit down, because it does affect precincts for everything, except we're doing poll books now in Laramie County, so it might be a little different. But right, everything we do redistricting affects all of your county clerks and how they draw all of their precincts based on municipalities and counties. So, but yes, that would be my intent. Is you're part of the state, you know best more than anyone else on the committee. Here's what you talk to your local constituents. Do you want one seat for Torrington? Do you want to split Torrington in half and try to get, yeah. And then you'd come on behalf of your constituents in your county saying, here's what I believe we want. Yeah, go ahead.
Do we, between our joint committee, how many counties are left out, I guess, that we need to look at possibly and maybe split some of that load?
I just know from when talking to speaker, this committee is geographically diverse on purpose, right? We have 2 from Cheyenne, but Casper, Western Wyoming, Eastern Wyoming. The Senate has a Fremont, a Natrona, a Converse, a Laramie County. Oh, and Northeast Wyoming. I think my co-chairman, yeah. And so the other parts of the state, we would visit maybe more often, right? We will have public hearings and meetings throughout Wyoming. I think they had 14 10 years ago. And in some cases, I actually had one in the morning and took the state plane somewhere else that afternoon. We may look into that depending on how it kind of shakes out and when we get the numbers. Representative McGuire. And Danielle, I believe there's no one left on Zoom in the public meeting portion, so you could stop us on YouTube anytime if you'd like.
Sounds good, Mr. Chairman. I'll do so now.